All right, Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor that's due to Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem, Rachak, Wadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of the great millstone who rule well. Peace and blessings to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect. Shalom Barakathum. And I want to speak a little bit on the habeas corpus that's being mentioned in the news recently. One thing I wanted to say was that habeas corpus has already been, I don't want to say suspended, but they've had a loophole around it ever since the Obama period, okay, the Obama era. All right, and this started with really it started back, the foundation for it started back in the Bush era with the Patriot Act. Okay, around 2003 they passed it, and they came out with the new branch of the government called Homeland Security. All right, and they basically wrote in language of enemy combatants. Okay, and under this, Obama got it approved that they could declare you an enemy combatant even if you're a U.S. citizen. Okay, they had these things called FISA courts where it's basically a judge, and the judge rules on behalf of the prosecution 99% of the time in FISA courts. 99% of the time the judge rules in favor of the prosecutor. Okay. And these are private courts. They're basically sealed, top secret, sealed usually, or they're sealed and they're usually top secret. And you're just in there with a judge, and it's whatever they say, and they say, okay, and then boom, your rights are taken away. Obama did this and started this, and under the guise of catching the people that, wear the turbans on their heads, And so this really, the loophole for it has already been there. So, my question is why are they bringing this back up in the news to expand these powers again on something they can technically already do legally, with the loophole? And that's because I believe they're getting ready to make a move on a very large number of people. Okay, see, back then they could catch little one-offs, here or there, or they could tie you to this and tie you to that. They'll say, well, that time you left the country, you were doing this and you were doing that, and try to pin stuff on you. But they're bringing it back up now for what reason, And as the scriptures say, we're not ignorant to Satan's devices, all right? And habeas corpus goes back to really the 1200s, around the Magna Carta, which is one of the documents that the Constitution is based on. It first had habeas corpus. That was the first document that Esau wrote as a law of the land that superseded the king. See, before the Magna Carta, whatever the king said went. If the king said you were guilty on something, his word was law. Okay? And if he said you were guilty, you were guilty. Now the Magna Carta came out, and the Magna Carta said, well, you have to have proof, okay, or you have to have a body or some kind of evidence, all right, before the king could render you guilty. Now the king still had a lot of power, but that was the first, steps of it, and so these laws go way, way back. These are foundational laws, and you got Donald Trump, up here renaming countries. He's taking bribes openly, trying to annex other countries, and he's just outright doing just doing away with sweeping basic rights of people. Things that have been rights, and even backwards third world countries, these rights exist. But he's stepping over them because this guy is back in his lot, who we believe is Nero. All right, he's an egomaniac, and he's gonna pursue. He's in the spirit of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. Okay, where it says he enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. That's him. Okay, he's talking about a third term and all this other BS. So you're supposed to read, okay, where things are going. When the Apostle Paul spoke to us in the book of Thessalonians, he said, you brethren are not in darkness. Okay, he said you are not to be as those that are asleep. All right, and we're not to be ignorant of his devices. So what are these people doing? Okay, while they're worrying about groceries, which is another thing they set up, you know, he's about to make major moves on the population at large. Okay, you got to understand these people are psychopaths that run America. Okay, all of this politics, red, blue, left, right, it's all theater. Okay, and you'll see when that flag attempt, false flag attempt, or false flag I should say, happens. That's going to be this big emergency where the government's going to be able to use these real IDs he forced you to get to corral you towards a certain direction. All right, and ultimately you're going to be in a situation where you're desolate and destitute, and you're going to be begging for a solution. That's how he wants things, man. You know, and notice all that they inched their way up to this point. You know, going all the way back to Bush, to Obama, to this. All right, they passed all kind of legislation and more than that between them. So, you know, what are we to do? We are to pray and hasten this thing. You know, it sounds counterintuitive, but we want this thing to accelerate because we know that this is the time that the Lord will return to judge this place. When this place gets to its absolute peak wickedness, which is hard to believe it's not there already, you know, then the Lord's going to return. As the scriptures say, when he's about to fill his belly, then sudden destruction is going to rain on him. So this is why we hasten this, man. All right, we don't want to be comfortable here. We don't want you know, I know everybody wants, you know, these little trinkets. They want the payroll tax to go away. You know, some niggas want reparations. All right, some people want you know, small business loans to go to be back. You know, they want, you know, trinkets and things of this world to sustain you in your wickedness. But why do you want those things? Okay, why do you want those things? It says in Isaiah 30, they go down in the shadow of Egypt, and you go down with them, man, to do what? Add sin to sin. That's why y'all want these things. See, you're not righteous. Y'all don't want, you know, the evil day to be staved off because you're righteous. You want it to be staved off so you can continue doing your wickedness. See, and the Lord has a problem with that, and he's got a problem with you. He's got a problem with America. All right? And when these plagues hit, they're not going to turn back. We were just going over that at camp. Okay? That's in the book of 2nd Ezra. I forget the chapter. I think it's chapter 5. I could be wrong. But it speaks about those plagues coming like birth pains, man. When a woman's water breaks, all right, that's a wrap. The contractions start, and the contractions start getting closer and closer and closer together in succession. Okay, in succession. So when it gets down to the point where the baby's coming, America's finished and the kingdom is set up. Okay, and that's how these plagues are gonna hit. All right, one after another, and the closer we get to the last plague, the more closer together they're gonna be. You know, that's how the Lord described it, man, and it's not gonna turn back. Once these plagues start, we don't know what it's gonna be. You know, I speculate a cyber attack. It could be anything. All right, but once these things start, it's not going back. Okay, so this is why we preach the kingdom of heaven and to repent. Because if you don't, after the water breaks, the Lord is not going to see fit to defend you, man. And you're going to need the Most High to defend you. When you see what's coming down the pipe, how these plagues are going to hit, there's not going to be a conventional way out of this. All right? You're going to need the Spirit of the Lord. Anyway, I said what I had to say on the matter. You know, this thing, you know, it's a hell of a year so far, man. You know? So I'll end it there. Lord willing, this is edifying. On to the next. Shalom.